Cnut had fought for most of his life. He had become King of England, King of Denmark, King of Norway, and ruled parts of Sweden. He was only around 45 when he died, but in those 45 years he became the most powerful ruler in Western Europe, second only to the Holy Roman Emperor. He also became only one of 2 kings in English history to ever be called great, and has even been said to be the most effective king in Anglo-Saxon history. A Viking. A warrior. Cnut came from a long line of great Scandinavian rulers, going all the way back to Sigurd Snake in the Eye and Ragnar Lothbrook. His father was the mighty Sven Forkeard. It was said that Sven had revolted and took the throne from his father, Harald Bluetooth, who had converted to Christianity. It was a time of bloodshed and conquest. The Vikings had been raiding and attacking England for centuries. When Cnut was born, the King of England was Ethelred II, who would become known later as Ethelred the Unready. Ethelred had become king at the age of between 9 and 12. There had been peace between Viking and Anglo-Saxon for almost 10 years. But by the time Ethelred was around 14, attacks began again, each becoming more bloody and devastating. Ethelred attempted to quell the Danes by paying them off, but again they would return. By the year 1002, tensions were at a high, and Ethelred ordered the massacre of all the Danes in England. On the feast day of St. Brice, November 13th, 1002, a mass slaughter took place. Cnut's aunt, Gunhild, as well as her husband Palig, who was a Dane living in England serving King Ethelred, was slain in the massacre. Cnut's father was so enraged at the act of Ethelred, it is believed that he was moved to avenge his sister's death and the great slaughtering of the Danes in England. And avenge he did. Sven invaded England, and Cnut, though he was of no great age, came with him. Cnut had been schooled in the intricacies of war by Thorkel the Tall, who was a member of the elite Jomsvikings. Cnut was said to have been exceptionally tall and strong, and the handsomest of men, all except for his nose, that was thin, high-set, and rather hooked. He had a fair complexion and a fine, thick head of hair. In 1013, Ethelred was forced into exile, and Cnut's father, Sven Forkeard, seized the crown. But this was to be short-lived. He died just 5 weeks later. Some say he was murdered. Some say he fell from his horse. After his father's death, Cnut's elder brother became king of Denmark. The Vikings and those who followed Danelaw in England proclaimed Cnut king. But the Anglo-Saxon ealdormen and nobility of England were afraid of what a Danish king might mean for them and for England. So they called Ethelred back from exile in Normandy to come be king. Ethelred, newly returned, mustered up an army and forced Cnut to retreat back to Denmark. Cnut knew a stronger force was needed to take England. And so, while in Denmark, he recruited and he planned. By the summer of 1015, Cnut had his force. With around 10,000 men and 200 longships, Cnut returned. And for the next 14 months, blood was shed. Cnut fought his way through England against the Anglo-Saxon army led by Ethelred's son, Edmund Ironside. Edmund was incredibly strong and brave and fought hard against Cnut and his army. Ethelred eventually died on the 23rd of April, 1016, and Edmund ascended to the throne. But Cnut was not deterred. On he fought Edmund until the decisive Battle of Assendon in October of 1016. Cnut defeated Edmund and forced him to accept a treaty that divided the kingdom. Edmund would keep Wessex, while Cnut would take the rest of England. But again, this was to be short-lived. Edmund died at the age of 25 or 26 on the 30th of November, 1016. And Cnut finally became the sole king of England. This would be a different title than the Anglo-Saxon kings who had called themselves King of the English. Now Cnut was King of England. To secure his claim to the throne, he married Ethelred's widow, Emma of Normandy. This helped Cnut gain the support of the English nobility and the clergy. It also strengthened the alliance between England and Normandy and could help Cnut defend his empire from attacks of other Viking rulers. This was not all Cnut did to secure his rule. He also had Ethelred's son killed, as well as Edmund's brother, and a number of the noblemen who outwardly opposed him. And he forced the remaining sons of Edmund into exile, so that no one could attempt to usurp his reign. Cnut's brother died 2 years later, making Cnut the King of Denmark, and by 1028 he would defeat Olaf II and would also become King of Norway. By the time Cnut was around 38 years old, his empire stretched from Scotland to Scandinavia, the North Sea Empire. Cnut would become a clever and diplomatic ruler and ended up garnering the respect of those he ruled. During his reign over England, there was peace and prosperity. The attacks that England had seen for centuries by the Vikings stopped because Cnut was now in control over all the lands that those attacks had come from. Trade increased. He issued common coinage amongst the lands he ruled, which created even greater unity. Cnut, like his grandfather Harold Bluetooth, was Christian, and to make up for all of the bloodshed and destruction he incurred forging his empire, he became a great patron to monasteries and rebuilt churches. He made a specific effort to foster good relations with the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. He even went on a pilgrimage to Rome. Cnut respected the laws and customs of the English people and would eventually appoint both Danes and Englishmen to his council. And though Cnut was Christian, many of his people and his army were pagan. He was able to maintain a balance and respect all of his people. On the 12th of November, 1035, Cnut died in Shaftesbury, in Dorset, England. His body was taken to the Old Minster Church in Winchester, where Alfred the Great had originally been buried. There, his body would finally be laid to rest. But when William the Conqueror conquered England, the Old Minster Church was torn down to make way for a new cathedral. In 1158, the bodies of 8 kings, including Cnut and his wife Emma, and 2 bishops, were exhumed, and the remains were placed in mortuary chests in the new cathedral. In 1642, over 600 years after Cnut the Great was laid to rest, 6 of the 10 mortuary chests were smashed by Oliver Cromwell's troops. Some of the bones were taken out and used to throw through the stained glass windows of Winchester Cathedral. What bones were left were carefully gathered and placed back in the chests that remained.